That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast at the intersection of faith and fear, where every week we discuss what scares us in order to find what saves us. This is the fear of God. Speaking to you right now is one of your hosts, Nathan Rouse, and typically with me is fellow co-host Reed Lackey. And guys, you know, he was here. Clearly something distracted him. He said he needed, listen, at this point, I don't need to tell you guys, but you know how Reed is with his celebrity sightings. They are frequent and high profile. But he said he needed to go. He had seen on his way home and needed to go check on a guy who looks remarkably like Michael Fassbender. I don't know. We'll see what that was about when he returns. I'm a Fassbender fan, so you know, hopefully he gets maybe a selfie, maybe, I don't know, an email address, maybe a face hugger to the face. In the meantime, allow me to welcome you back to our year-long umbrella series that is remarkably quickly coming to a close, that of 2020, where we are examining and have been examining 20 films from the last 20 years in the year 20. Oh, don't hit the computer, Rouse. Today, we are looking at the year 2017. But I am getting ahead of myself. Because here at The Fear of God, we explore. We don't explain. Except for right now, when I explain that you can listen to The Fear of God at your nearest podcast platform. Spotify, Dave Courtney, thank you very much. You can watch The Fear of God occasionally on YouTube, and you can browse The Fear of God always on the web at thefearofgodpodcast.com, where you'll find episode archives and merchandise, including cell phone cases, t-shirts, campaign buttons. I mean, you know, it's still face masks, magnets, pillows. Reed, hey, buddy, you're back. Did you meet Michael or someone who just looked like him?
It just looked like him.
Oh.
Happens all the time. It's really hard these days when you're chasing somebody in masks. You actually, you know, like it's difficult because then, you know, the eyes are deceiving because you can only see like from here to here. You know, when everybody is Shredder, then it's just yeah.
Toka, Raza. Wow, that is a Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze reference. Indeed.
So yeah,
well,
of all the
back,
things
friends.
that I thought you were, thank you. Of all the things I thought you were going to throw at me, I thought you were going to like, oh, he trying to decide which accent to use or trying to find his double or something like that. But no, just a standard celebrity sighting. So that was lots of fun. That was good.
I mean, it is layered into the content of the day. I wasn't just totally pulling that one out of nowhere.
No,
but,
of course.
You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It is. Yeah.
Wow. Moving right along.
Fun episode here.
Quite the critic all of a sudden, everybody.
All right. Don't let Reed leave a review. Like, good Lord.
No, do not. that Nathan, he makes the most stupid non sequiturs. I wish he'd shave that dumb beard. So, Riri, we've got a little bit of business time. Speaking of reviews, we would like them.
Yeah,
we would. We are not afraid to ask, and you should leave, and we would like to ask for some reviews. Yeah. Just keeping that in front of everybody, that you can go to your podcast platform, presumably, and you know, if you use it, iTunes, and leave us a 5-star rating and or review. We would love for you to do that for us. Reed, so now that we've got the review ask out of the way and the shamelessness of that, I'm in sales, I can ask for things. Is there voting still left to do? I mentioned campaign buttons. Is there voting still in play?
There is not much of it though. So as of this recording,
we're certifying these votes.
Yeah,
it's happening.
Yeah, your time is
You're
up.
Not allowed to refute it.
No, not anymore. So as of this recording, the only votes available to you, as of this episode release, the only voting available to you is 2019 and 2020. I would make especially a case because a lot of recent films in 2020 are getting some viewership. So if you have one that you really want to champion for 2020, I would strongly encourage you to go and cast the vote. You just go to fearofgodpodcast.com, click on the banner on the top. That will take you to those surveys. 2019 and 2020 is really all you have left, and it will not be long before 2019 will close down. So go there, pick your favorite horror films of 2019 and 2020, and we will be counting them down, as we will on this episode and the next few following, your favorite horror films from each of those years, which has been lots and lots of fun.
You know, I gotta imagine there's a few listeners out there, hopefully just a few, who just really don't love Nathan's politics but enjoy what we do. And because this has been the year of just 2020, they're like, man, I really like it that Nathan and Reed are discussing these current, you know, kind of hits, if you will, of the recent horror genre. But they're like, I really wish he would stop lacing everything with political commentary. Sorry.
Well,
yeah. Wah, wah. Lastly, it is, as of Reed, I don't know if you've seen the calendar lately, December has begun, which is staggering and astonishing. That's a really great facial reaction you just made. I feel like we've earned it. We do it anyway, but particularly so this year, maybe we've earned our January respite. So just alerting listeners that we are taking January off from formal standard episodes. There might be a few surprises in the mix there, but our typical stuff will not be filling up your feeds. That said, if you want to interact, if you want to needle, if you want to encourage, if you want to meet like-minded folk of the Fogger variety, come find us on the Facebook group, the Fear of God Facebook group. It's pretty straightforward. James Page, shout out to you, brother. He's gonna
welcome.
Like, what?
He just what happened?
Yeah, he was just driving and he just swerved. You know, he's like, whoa, my gosh, didn't expect to hear my name there.
Like, oh my God.
James has been around for quite a while. And
absolutely. Yeah.
He joined the group the other day and I was like, bro, you weren't here already? I felt a little bad.
Because he's interacted on the page so frequently. So welcome to the Facebook group. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, now you're in the real inner circle. You're a true Fogger now. That's what we got in terms of business time, Riri.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You're ready to move on to do we have any guests this week?
You gotta love when the guest queues up the guest. So yes, as a matter of fact, this is the next to penultimate appearance of there's 4 more, including today.
Yes, this is the antepenultimate.
No, don't even bother.
But it is. It's the antepenultimate.
Regardless, Lackey the listicle, my occasionally listless list-making lackey.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, it's starting to get old.
Antepenultimate is a real thing. So yes, hi.
But would that mean 4? Because penultimate is just next to last.
Next to last, I think.
I would presume antepenultimate is trying to just push one more out. So
yeah, maybe just 3. I don't know. But this
man.
You know what? Oh my Lord.
Oh, it's over.
It's to the fog meter. So
don't recommend.
Just cancel this episode. Okay, so no, we have your favorite horror films of 2017. This is very exciting. I have to admit that, like, the more we've progressed in this particular, like, the last couple, it happened, and then it happened again with this one. I fully anticipate, because now that voting is closed for 2018, it's going to be the same condition for that. Being a top 10, there's some cool flicks that don't make the list. There's some cool things that just kind of don't hit the meter, as
top
it were.
10.
Yeah, the top 10.
I mean,
so
you can say it.
Some really strong films that didn't quite make the cut. I'll just mention in brief passing: Anna and the Apocalypse, which we've covered. Tigers Are Not Afraid, which we covered. 1922, which is a film that continues to grow in my esteem the more I think about it. And then also some films that are really strong that we didn't cover, like Annabelle Creation, which is another good sort of prequel that is almost stronger than the original. Revenge, and a film
I like that film.
Yeah, and a film that I liked a lot with Samara Weaving as the star, The Babysitter, on Netflix. Didn't quite make the top 10. So some great, if that tells you the caliber of the things that didn't make the top 10.
And what's fun about these is, especially these days, you and I just we come in hot to these recordings. It's like, whoa, I just hopped out of the car and mic on. I don't see these lists until literally right now.
Right.
And it's pretty cool. With this recording, we will have now covered 9 of the 10 on the top 10.
That's wild.
That is
That's absolutely wild. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Do you want to do evens or odds this time around?
I'll start us out. So at number 10 is a film we covered. Was this part of a series? This is part of 2017 best ofs, wasn't it?
Maybe, yeah.
Because we did.
I think it was.
We did a trio that year, I think.
Yes.
It is by some creators to continue keeping an eye on, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. It is The Endless, which we featured on episode 146. I really like this flick.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really, really good. They have a new one that they're working on, and
yes.
The name escapes me.
It's already out.
That's right. That's right. And I have not seen it. But no, it's a really strong film. Listen to all of our thoughts on that one.
You know who has seen it? New Dad Blake. Shout out.
Hey, shout out. New Dad.
Yay.
Yeah.
Congrats to he and his
New
wife.
Dad as of this week.
New baby
yes.
boy.
Absolutely.
So yes,
Glorious
what's number 9,
wonderful.
Reed? Yes.
Okay, so number 9 is a film that you and I believe both have seen, but we haven't covered yet. It directed by David Bruckner. It's available on Netflix, I believe. Might even be a Netflix original, based on a novel by Adam Neville. It's The Ritual,
It's a good
which I
flick.
found,
Solid.
yeah, very effective.
Number 8 is the one, the only. You know her, you love her, Mother. Written. Hey, what? Back off. It's my line item here. Written and directed by Darren Aronofsky, starring J Law and J Bard. Oh goodness, what a flick. We covered this on episode 70. I think it's safe to say I don't recommend the film, but our conversation about it was really impactful.
I'm still quite proud of that conversation. Recorded during one of those rare visits. Yeah, in your home when I was in North Carolina visiting. Just one morning. I remember
previous home. Yep.
Yeah, I remember I watched it the night before and then just got up that morning, drove over to your house. It was a lovely, wonderful recording time. And you can kind of feel the energy in the episode too. I think that's part of what's sort of bolsters it, is you and I had, we're just sort of catching up and in the same space and everything. So it was really fun.
It's a weird feeling. What's that like? What's
I
number
know,
7, Riri? Speaking of 2020.
So number 7, written and directed by Trey Edward Schultz, Fog episode 69. It Comes at Night. Also a really, really strong conversation, really strong film. You can listen to all of our thoughts on all of that.
I mean,
69.
Who raise your hand, listener, if you have thought about this film this year. I mean,
yes, eerie residences.
Has been eerie. I really like this movie. It is one of the very few I could point to, and I could count on one hand, that I had no idea how to comprehend it when I watched it, and sat in my car for about 30 minutes just reading stuff after it to try to figure out what on earth did I just watch. But it is definitely powerful.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Number 6 is the what's the character, the persona's name in this movie?
Peach Fuzz.
The second iteration of Peach Fuzz and 4th appearance of Mark's Duplass. No, it is Creep 2, directed and co-written by Patrick Bryce, featured on Fear of God episode 103 as part of our number 2 series.
That is true. And supposedly, I mean, I remember in close proximity to Creep 2, they said they were making a Creep 3. I don't know if like global pandemic, pushed that out or whatever, but I mean, this was 3 years ago. And I would anticipate that they should have. I mean,
Mark, Patrick,
get it together, y'all. Like,
come on, guys. Peach Fuzz.
More
what,
creeping.
Is he demanding more money? Is Peach Fuzz demanding more money?
I know. Creep 3 is like, it's going to creep by. It's going to creep up on you. Take forever to do.
Nope. Keep going.
Nope. Number 5. So number 5 is a film that I really love. I think this is going to be a weird thing to say, but I love this film perhaps more than the film objectively deserves, because it just really resonated with me in ways that sort of push up films in the pantheon of my favoritism. Directed by Mike Flanagan, based on the novel by Stephen King. Fog episode 125, one of the few Stephen King adaptations that didn't receive the quarterly King treatment, because we did it as part of a Flannel Graph Flanagan series. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was overarching that year was 19. So that was
Oh,
when we
that's
were
right.
diving in and out.
And it
1922, Gerald's Game.
that's right. That's right.
The short stories.
Mm-hmm.
Was a good
Yep,
series.
that's right.
Good
Nope,
series.
that's absolutely right. But it's Gerald's Game, everybody. Number 5
Sorry,
was
I said
Gerald's
it
Game.
before you.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's all
It's
right.
okay.
You know, you pushed at me because it was your line. And
You're
then
right.
You just decided,
Well, I
I'll show him.
accidentally did
I'll
that.
show that. I'll show that mofo. I was
Yeah.
like, I'll just
I'll
spit it out.
love him. Number 4 on the list, and our featured content for today is directed by Sir Ridley Scott. I believe he is a sir, actually.
Is he a sir?
What do we know? I mean, I'm just reading the notes.
We're just
here.
handing out knighthood.
You get a knighthood. You get a knighthood. I'd like a knighthood.
Good
Alien
knighthood.
Covenant. Alien Covenant. Starring Billy Crudup, Michael Fassbender,
Mhm.
Catherine Waterston, and
Mhm.
some other people.
Danny
McBride.
Yep.
What's number 3, Reed?
Number 3, directed by Christopher Landon. It is another film that I just absolutely adore. It is Happy Death Day, featured on Fog episode 86. I adore this
That was
movie.
part of Blumhouse.
Was
our
it?
Blumhouse
Yes.
run.
Yeah, I believe it was.
I think
believe
so.
It was. And it was, it really, I have tremendous affection for this film. I love it. And its sequel, as a matter of fact. I love them both.
Number 2 on this list, we had a lot of fun with his other film, Mama, a couple weeks ago. It is It. I guess subtitled Chapter 1, maybe. Directed by Andy Muschietti on our quarterly king, number 2. Honestly, this is one of our highest listened episodes in our 4 years, is It. And it is a great film. I have very little good to say about its follow-up, but this
I had to throw that in
is
there.
very strong. I did. And I chose to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had to, and I did.
Yeah.
What is number 1, Reed?
Don't even give. I'm not even going to give you a chance to rebut. Just tell
number
us.
Number 1 is Get Out, written and directed by.
Yes. I see,
by Jordan
I
Peele.
see what you did there.
Fear of God,
Yes.
episode 72, which has the notorious distinction in Fear of God history of being the episode where I sound like frog, like an old man frog, like
Lord
Mr.
have mercy.
Toad swallowed a bug on
Yes.
his wild ride.
Do not adjust your audio. There is nothing wrong with it. It is merely Nathan trying desperately to get over a cold. What I love so much about that is that you so were committed to opening our episode. I remember I was like, dude, I'll open and everything. He's like, you're like, no, it's me. I'm gonna open. Yeah, it was great.
What's wrong?
Also featured my good buddy Anthony Doris.
Yes.
On that episode. So number 1, written and directed by Jordan Peele, of course. Get Out. It is your number 1, Fog episode number 72. Hey, before you pull it up, we gotta go to Lackey the Historilistical.
Oh, wow.
And find
so many lists.
That's right. So I'll just go through it very, very quickly.
Okay.
This was the historical top 10 of 2017 when we did this in proximity, when we actually did it in 2017. So previously, Gerald's Game didn't make the cut, which I thought was interesting that it landed at number 5 in the updated list. That made me very happy. The Endless Creep 2 and The Ritual didn't make the cut either when we did this the first time through. But number 10 was Killing of a Sacred Deer, written and directed by...
Which I've still not seen.
I haven't either. And I liked The Lobster, but I still haven't made it to Killing of a Sacred Deer. Yorgos Lanthimos didn't make the cut this time around.
Bless you.
Number 9 was Alien Covenant. And I find it interesting that last week's The Shallows was number 9 and jumped to number 3. This week's Alien Covenant.
Funny with these votes.
It's weird through the night, you know. So anyway, directed by
Massive dump.
Directed by Ridley Scott. Of course, we'll be talking about it momentarily.
Sir Ridley Scott.
Yeah. And number 8 was Happy Death Day, which also rose tremendously in the updated list, which I love. Number 7 was a film that, like, this sucks because I really like this film. You should see this. People should see this film if they don't. Written and directed by Sean Byrne. It's The Devil's Candy. Now, what's interesting is due to that whole like festival release thing, it was included in the nominees for 2015, but didn't make that list and didn't obviously make 2017 because it wasn't even a nominee for that year. But landing in Almost the same place. It actually dropped a little bit in the list. Was Mother. Number 6 was Mother. It
was
dropped
what?
to number Mother, and it
Okay.
dropped to number 8 on the updated list. Number 5 was Annabelle Creation. It was a good. I mean,
Interesting.
it's a good flick, but didn't even make the cut on the updated list, which I find interesting. Number 4 was It Comes at Night, and it dropped to number 7 on the updated list. That fascinates me.
We're scared. I mean, Reed,
It's
been a year.
too soon.
Everyone's like,
Too soon.
I've seen it. I
Like,
now lived it.
I lived that. So the top 3. Oh well, no, actually, number 3 was It. So
Okay.
it rose to number 2 because it no longer had competition from the historical number 2 in 2017, which was Split, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Now that landed in second place on the 2016 list, again because of the whole.
There's some fuzzy math going on here.
It is. It's weird. It's weird. But number 1 then, number 1 now was Get Out. Then and now.
Great flick.
That was it. It deserves
great flick.
So
I'd have voted for it a third time.
for a third term.
Do you want me to
Let's do
hop
it.
over? Let's do it. You know, I don't like have no knowledge of. It's just not really fun. But I like the list part of what we're doing these days. I'll be sad to part with 2020.
Me too.
And 21 doesn't quite have the same ring to it. Doesn't roll off the tongue.
It's too
quite the same way.
Too much. About
So looking at the worldwide box office in 2017, it's like I just feel. What's a good analogy I'm looking for here? It's like the Jack Bauer clock over your head, knowing the 2020 box office is. It's like, man, the numbers are going to be abysmal. Compared to where they have been. So brief scan of 10 through 6, honorable mention to number 11, which is the lovely Pixar film Coco. Number 10 is the first solo Gal Gadot, that of Wonder Woman with $821 million. Good flick. Wonder Woman also sequel coming Christmas Day to HBO Max. And, if you want to go to the theater, we'll be hanging out in my den watching Wonder Woman Part 2, 1984. Number 9 on the list. Number 9 on the list, coming in at $853 million, and coming in at number 2 on mine and Reed's top 5, whatever it was, MCU films. It is the one, the only Thor Ragnarok.
Yay!
Love that flag.
Yeah.
Love it. Oh, scene is so good.
So great.
I want to go watch that right now. Number 8 on the list, MCU canon here, coming in at just under 10 million more than Ragnarok, is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Mary Poppins.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't it?
Mary
Wow.
Poppins,
all three MCU films are on this list. Number 7.
Wow.
Okay, I forgot I'm not supposed to be talking about dollars on this 10 through 6.
That's
Number
okay.
7 is a movie I have literally never heard of, called not just have I not heard of it. It is a sequel. It's called Wolf Warrior 2. I don't even know what that is. Right.
Are you really?
That face says everything. Yes. Staring at it right now. Box Office Mojo 2017 worldwide box office, Wolf Warrior 2 with $870 million. It must be some super popular foreign film.
Most successful film you've never heard of. Wow.
Number 6.
Wow.
Is Spider-Man Homecoming. Good flick.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Number 5. I have not seen either of the entries in this franchise. At $962 million, it is Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. I guess that's the first one. No?
Welcome
Maybe
to the Jungle is the first one. No,
okay.
Welcome to the Jungle is the first one. They're fun. They're really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
They're
did just watch
fun.
Kevin Hart's new Netflix special, so that was fun.
Oh.
Number 4 on the list is I don't think I saw this. It was Despicable Me 3, just crossing the $1 billion mark, which is crazy. Number 3, and
it's no
low
Wolf
key.
Warrior.
No, it's not. But what is? No, really, what is it?
A legitimate question, not a rhetorical question.
Number 3 on this list, and low key B-side 2021, thanks to new Papa Blake, is The Fate of the Furious at $1.2 billion.
Sure.
We're gonna will this thing into existence. It's just
Here it
gonna happen.
comes. Oh.
Here we go. Oh, all fast, all furious.
No!
Number 2 is what I think is a pretty competent reimagining of the Disney classic in this new era we're in, and that is the Kenneth Branagh Beauty and the Beast at 1.26 billion.
Is that
I
Kenneth
liked this
Branagh?
flick.
I did like
is.
it too. I did not realize that it was him. But yeah, I liked it quite a bit.
I'm about 90% positive it is. We'll look that up at some point.
Because I know he did Cinderella, which is why I was uncertain.
That's it. You're right. My bad.
Okay. Yeah, because I know he did Cinderella, which I still consider one of the strongest of the
I loved Cinderella.
live action stuff. Yeah. But I liked The Beauty and the Beast. I did.
Of course, on Box Office Mojo, it doesn't give me any actual
The director.
cast or crew. Oh, there it is. Crew information. We're gonna find this out real quick while we're here.
Oh,
There you go. Hey, look up. Bill Condon. Sorry, Bill. Sorry, Kenneth. Bill Condon directed Beauty and the Beast. But I do like Beauty and the Beast. I thought it was pretty good.
Yes, I thought it was good.
Number 1, Reed.
I'm scared.
Number 1. I love it. $1.3 billion. The last great gasp of the film franchise. It is
Now I know what it is.
Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Goodness
I love
gracious,
The
I
Last Jedi.
love this movie.
Yeah, I love that movie. I love it.
Oh man, it's so good. So good. I feel like we should
good.
This is a backdoor to discuss the Jedi episode of Mandalorian, which was also so good. But no, I mean, it might be the need to be different side of me that continues to shore up in the face of criticism to this film, but I would put this right now on a top 10 at least favorite films of all time. I love.
Wow.
Yeah, I said it.
Wow, that is a big deal.
Yep.
It's definitely my favorite Star Wars film, and I accredit that to it being the favorite of mine that I was able to see in the theater. Because obviously the first 3, I just, I caught them as a child growing up, and
Did you?
I did. Complex viewing histories.
Sure. Yeah.
But
yeah. So I've heard.
But no, Last Jedi is definitely, I think, and I know that's a bold statement because some people hate it and disavow it, but it's my favorite of the 9 films. I think it's my favorite. So
I think that's a fair assessment.
Well, that puts one more installment of hashtag 2020 in the books. It was
Only a few left.
It was a pretty brisk sort of clip through that material. But again, we're getting into stuff that we've covered already before.
Yeah.
And, you ready to cover something else right now?
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So I had mentioned when we were setting this up last week, and I truly mean this. I still feel this way. Like this experience of having a list like that where we've covered most of the material, and listeners already know for these 2020 installments, we pretty much just pick the highest ranked item that we have not yet covered. And so I enjoyed, in this process of like, oh, what are we going to talk about next week? Getting to the list and being like, oh, well, there's the clear winner because it's number 4 on the list. Everything surrounding it, we've already covered. Of course, The Ritual made the list, but it was too far down to justify it over Covenant. So I was like, no, this is great because I honestly could not, I mentioned this last week, I could not conceive of a different context in which we might have covered this film. And so I really appreciated that. And I'm going to be actively trying to think of ways in which listeners can possibly pigeonhole us into other surprise coverage in different contexts in future months, because I just really enjoyed that quite a bit. Now, I knew that you had seen Prometheus. Had you ever seen Covenant before watching it for this?
No. I didn't mean that to be a whisper. No.
No.
No. In a world. No, I had seen Prometheus. I've not seen Prometheus since the theater. But I had seen it. I had not seen this whatsoever.
So what's interesting, and I'm going to ask for your thoughts in a second, but so I rewatched Prometheus and then watched Alien Covenant as preparation for the episode. My memory of Prometheus was passively defender. So like I was like, it got
That's like the worst superhero ever. The passive defender. Like,
The passive
okay,
defender's like, okay, guys,
I
like,
guess I'll help.
listen,
Come
everybody,
on.
everybody,
Come on.
calm down.
You do
Everybody calm
deserve to
down.
live.
Let me
So step in front of this bullet, I guess.
not too fast. So
Sorry. Go ahead.
but no, so my traditional sort of position was when people would rail against Prometheus, which surprisingly they did rather frequently. Like there was a lot of backlash against Prometheus in ways that I'm still trying to understand. I would usually be the one that chimed in and was like, I found Prometheus kind of interesting. Sure, I didn't love it, but I think it's got some interesting ideas at its core. Beautifully shot. Like the film just looks gorgeous. And I was like, so I would kind of defend Prometheus. Watching it this time around, I actively enjoyed it, like to the degree to where I was like, my esteem has now risen to where I would not only just passively defend Prometheus, but actively defend it and might even champion it to a certain degree as worthy of reconsideration. In contrast to that, I saw Alien Covenant, and my first viewing of it, I was like, that was fun. That was good. I liked it. This time around, watching it literally the next day after having seen Prometheus, my esteem for it went down a bit. I don't hate it, but I have a couple of things that I'll point out in contrast that I don't respond to as positively about Alien Covenant from this viewing this time around. That setup being given, I am going to invite you to share your thoughts. So.
Do I get some time?
You know what? I don't need your
That was
attitude.
a lot.
I don't need to. Yeah.
I'm gonna go jump on the Nostromo. So I have seen Prometheus. My general affection for, Lindelof, the hack. I'm just kidding. He's not.
Whoa.
Is shots fired. Sorry. Digression there. I remembered liking Prometheus and it activating my imagination a good bit for what it was after. And then now, but here's the thing that matters to this conversation is I have always been you are a passive defender of Prometheus. I am a passive fan of the Alien franchise.
Okay,
so I'm not I except for the AVPs, of which there's at least 2, right?
There are only 2, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing those, but I've seen everything else now. I like them. I think, as we discussed on our Alien conversation, we haven't done Aliens, right? We have not done that.
No, we only covered Alien.
I remember discussing on that. I mean, it's got one of the finest creature designs in the history of cinema.
Yes, absolutely.
But there are deep fans of the mythology, the Weyland-Yutani stuff, and I think I'm saying that right. And
I believe so, yeah.
And so that stuff is interesting, but I've never been the one to just like glom onto that. To your point, and bless his heart, he did have a rough run there immediately post Lost. The reason people hated on Prometheus, at least on a certain sector, was the Lindelof attachment, which he came in late to the process, and
it wasn't fair at all.
For a lot of it really wasn't. But I remember liking Prometheus, liking some of the things it was scratching at, even if I didn't totally understand the mythology it was trying to lay the groundwork for.
Sure.
I thought about revisiting it for this, but nobody got time for that except Riri. Impressed and applaud you. I just didn't get around to it, and I'll say this for Alien Covenant, not knowing what to expect, but having a mildly low expectations just from general comprehension of its reception.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know anything about the story or anything. I found myself kind of having fun with it. I was like, oh, this is, I mean, more or less what you're after in an alien film is xenomorphs.
That's a new.
That's the cow version. That's the cow version. The xenomorph.
It just
because they've all got little distinctives about the thing they come from. That's the cow version. Xenomorphs. That's hysterical. The xenomorphs. When you come to an alien movie, you want to see that well executed on screen.
Mhm.
You want some weird cyborg stuff going on,
Right.
and you know, action and
S-
creepy crawlies, and this kind of delivers that. If
Yes.
you're like me, who is not hyper plugged into the mythology, and even in that, I found it kind of interesting, which is me. I'm actually not rebuffing what you're saying because I haven't seen Prometheus close enough to it to be able to compare the two. But for just the casual observer of the franchise, it's kind of cool to see, oh, they're kind of laying this interesting groundwork for where the mythology came from and is going to. And that's cool. And hey,
Mhm.
I like these performers. So, yeah,
Right.
a
But
rough assessment of my experience of it.
you so accurately sort of described what I do think is one of the strengths of the film is that it's fun and it delivers aliens on the Alien franchise. One of the
Xena
things Xena moves. So it's not a one for one comparison by any means. But um it's interesting that Last Jedi came up a few minutes ago because I do at least mildly, again, it is not a one for one comparison. I do at least mildly compare some of what happened with Prometheus
Mm-hmm.
to what happened with Last Jedi, which
I
is
see what you're doing.
Prometheus didn't give fans of Alien what they wanted. And I think they dismissed, perhaps too quickly and perhaps unfairly, dismissed what Prometheus was trying to instead do, which I feel, this is just my opinion, I feel, having watched the films in close proximity to each other, that Prometheus aims for something a bit different and hits it pretty close to the target.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect film, and it doesn't answer all the questions that it raises, but it raises them thoughtfully and interestingly, and has some really thought-provoking elements to its core. So it aims for something different and mostly hits it. In contrast to that, Alien Covenant, and I think largely because of the backlash, like it's kind of trying to be like, well, you got aliens now. Now
Well,
we're gonna put the aliens
but
in on the
to
thing.
your point rather directly, and I don't know that, not that this would necessarily happen. I do think we should limit Prometheus talk after a minute, just because that's
It's not
not
our
the primary
featured
thing, and
coverage.
I don't want to hurt people listening to it who may not have seen that. But to your co-host included, but to your point, even Ridley Scott in conversation post Prometheus is open about, hey, I was steering away from the xenomorph sort of iconography towards something different because the fans don't want it, and then was put in his place by fandom, which has its own layers of whatever you want to do with it there.
Yes.
And steered back into it. Now, I'll ask you, with your recency of watching it, for the purposes of this conversation and discussion of Alien Covenant, and maybe listeners who haven't seen Prometheus, Covenant clearly establishes, in summary, that android Fassbender is responsible in large part, if not in total, for the creation of what would become the xenomorph sort of, race of whatever.
Absolutely.
Remind me, I know the xenomorph in at least its, kind of germ form shows up in the tail end of Prometheus, bursts out of somebody. I don't even remember the total context.
Bursts out of an engineer.
It's a grisly scene.
Mm-hmm.
Out of a human person or an
no,
engineer?
Out of an engineer.
Oh.
Yeah, one of the engineer people. Yeah. So in the final, just very briefly, one of the final climactic scenes, an engineer who is alive and has attacked and killed everybody that survived. The beings. Right. Our main character, Shaw, who is referenced in Alien Covenant, has a fight with him, and the fight ultimately ends by her putting him in the path of an overgrown face hugger, and when I say overgrown face hugger, probably a 10-foot tall, huge face hugger kind of thing that attaches himself to the engineer. And then at the final shot of Prometheus, after Shaw and David rise off the planet, is the sort of primordial version of the xenomorph bursting out of the engineer.
Sure. Okay. But but I guess what I'm trying to ask for the purposes of setting up Alien Covenant discussion is, does David as tinkerer and creator, is that part of Prometheus? I just can't remember. I know he's a primary character and or ultimate antagonist on a certain level, but I can't remember, is he a geneticist or whatever it is that he is in this one?
The seeds are planted,
Okay.
but not to the degree that they go in Alien Covenant. Like, he is responsible for like kind of the infection element, and you can see that his character is interested in what these genetic possibilities are for these beings. He's
Mhm.
fascinated by that, and you can see the ground laid for it, but he does not begin that process actively in the course of Prometheus.
Now,
So yeah,
would you say that your and this could be a good segue just into the content of Covenant or the discussion of Covenant, would you say that why your sort of attitude shifted some is because, hey, Prometheus is more thematic and I like the thematics it was after, whereas Covenant steers back into more traditional, at least, action tropes? Like, would you say that's part of why you kind of toned back your affection,
it,
or is it something
it's
else specific?
no, that's definitely a prime factor. Is Prometheus is more interested in its ideas than it is its
Yeah.
narrative,
Yeah.
and I found that deeply compelling. Covenant is more interested in clipping paste to get us to where we want to get, which is monster movie.
Sure.
And while I'll give two characters in comparison, the character of Shaw is a person of
Which
faith.
is Numi Rapace, right?
Numi Rapace, yes,
Right.
she's a person of faith, and they have several moments and touch points throughout Prometheus where her character and her character's choices are informed by that, and she's wrestling with it and wrestling with the ideas in a way that is consistent throughout. In contrast to that, in Alien Covenant, Billy Crudup's character
Yeah.
is a person of faith, and they give barely more than lip service to that element of
Yeah. Yeah.
his personhood. So one of the things that stood out to me about Alien Covenant is ultimate thematics are there to kind of like the germs of them are there, but it did not feel like the film was as interested in doing much with them as much as it was in just getting to the aliens and getting to the gruesomeness. And that felt like a step down from what Prometheus does, which is commit to this is an idea driven story. And
Well,
so,
and
yeah.
what that makes me think of is some phraseology that is relatively new to my lexicon, at least, but you might be familiar with this notion of hard sci-fi and soft sci-fi.
Yes,
It
right.
feels like Covenant does steer a little more hard sci-fi. It's the nuts and bolts. It's the bone and blood of why a thing exists in the universe that's different than us or whatever. Whereas the soft sci-fi is, okay, we're not that interested in the details, we're interested in the ramifications or the implications. And
So it's interesting. I actually don't know because I think your definitions there might be correct, but I always thought the difference, and I don't know. So this is not me rebuffing. I always thought the difference was hard sci-fi is deeply rooted in the mechanics of how science fiction works, what people wanted
Sure.
Lost to be, where they're like, how does this time travel island work? What all that was, and that would get into hard sci-fi, where soft sci-fi is something more a bit like Back to the Future, where it's like, yeah, we're just gonna give you enough information to know that, yeah, this many gigawatts and 88 miles per hour and everything, and then you go back in
Right.
time. Isn't that fun? Like that's soft sci-fi is what I understand.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think we're loosely describing similar things, and in fact, wildly interesting, this keeps coming up. One of the criticisms that I would actually give ear to of The Last Jedi is that Star Wars historically is not a hard sci-fi franchise and
Oh,
series,
right.
but things like in The Last Jedi, I don't know if you remember this, but a primary plot device of the Jedi is fuel, and and having it or not having it. And some criticism was, what in the world? Why is this is suddenly Star Trek or something, like,
Yeah,
which
right,
is
understood.
criticism of Star Trek as much as just like Star Wars is not usually in this lane.
Right.
Anyway,
Right. Yes.
main takeaway simply being Covenant dispenses a bit with the more philosophical elements of what Prometheus sort of lays out, and to your point, I remember that's what fascinated me about Prometheus was
Right.
like, oh, this is some really interesting stuff. And I remember being one of those nerds who stayed up reading about it after the fact and theories and
Yes.
ideas that it presented. So
Yes.
no, I do remember having a fondness for it.
I think, and maybe this is our final word on Prometheus, I don't know, but I think listeners who have not seen it, just be prepared that yes, it's like it's only somewhat tangentially an alien movie, but it's fascinating, and I think it's really strong, and I think you, Nathan, specifically might really benefit from a rewatch of it. I think it's really interesting, and it's very absorbing. The score is beautiful in Prometheus. I was so like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it's just I think you would benefit from a rewatch.
And you would know this because I know you've spent some time the last few years in the Alien franchise from a critical perspective. But what's interesting to me about Alien writ large is it's almost kind of muddied its own waters now with what was intended to be. I don't even mean narratively, like actually narratively you could kind of put some interesting pieces together. I mean box office wise and release wise, because Prometheus was intended as the launch of a trilogy. They, for whether you would agree with it or not, they thought, okay, maybe we fumbled this in terms of what we were focusing on, pivot right back into Xenomorph, and now we've got Covenant. And actually, I was reading there was meant to be the third one, or at least maybe a second one of Covenant as a first. Who the heck knows at this point? Was Alien Awakening. Like that was already meant to be in production, because this one is 17 years pre Nostromo. In the chronology.
Yes, that's right.
17 or 19, something like that. Anyway, point being, from a pure just like film release standpoint, it's almost indiscernible which end is up, even though the narrative chronology kind of does a good job of tying itself off. Anywho,
before we get into more specifics, do you have any you've already mentioned kind of a couple, do you have any more specific trivial bits? I only have two that I wanted to specifically highlight.
I thought it was interesting that Catherine Waterston's hairstyle was because what's his name, the Flash, Credence, and the Dumb Beasts films, what's his name? Ezra Miller.
Ezra Miller. Yeah.
They were filming Fantastic Beasts. Catherine Waterston needed to record an audition. His wig was nearby. She put it on for the audition. They liked it. They kept it. So that's why her haircut is the way it is.
Use that hair.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
So weird.
That's the only other trivial bit I've got.
I only had two that I wanted to mention. One is just I find interesting. So you might have noticed James Franco in a very, essentially a cameo. Supposedly there was a lot of excised material, cutting room material that was going to be flashback, and his role was going to be bigger. But once they cut all of that material, it was essentially a cameo at this point. He plays, her character's husband, Branson. I did think it was interesting that somewhat to my frustration, a character who survives a previous installment is dead in the second one, but they died like off screen somewhere. That happens at the end of Aliens, because the girl and Hicks, character, they both survived Aliens, and then when Alien 3 opens up, they're just dead. Something got in the pods and they're just dead. And that was frustrating, because it would have been interesting to sort of see something progress with those characters. Likewise, in this, Shaw survived the end of Prometheus, and then she's just died off screen elsewhere when Covenant has begun. So that's just a frustrating habit that this franchise has, that I wish it would do a little bit more character continuity, because I think it would be more interesting beyond just the Ripley character and the Bishop character, which are really the only ones that have kind of carried over.
I'm sorry, we do need to get to Covenant specifically.
Yeah,
do the AVPs pretend to play in the same time stream or universe, or
it has been too long for me to accurately answer that, because honestly, I watched each of them, and to be honest, I didn't finish the second one, which is called Requiem. I watched the first one, didn't care much for it, watched like the first half of the second one before I realized like I don't really care about this one either. And so like I just kind of, maybe there's some fans of it out there that are like, dude, revisit friggin' AVP. Okay. Maybe I will at some point. Maybe that'll be another B-side or something at some point. But no,
Maybe
so
not.
I wouldn't be able to accurately.
Okay, no, that's fine.
So yeah, I didn't have much else in the way of trivial bits.
I do want to throw some kudos Amy Simmett's way, because I
yeah.
haven't she's starting to clock some fog time for us. She's now
It's
a
true.
3-timer
No.
with this and Pet Cemetery and You're Next.
Oh, it's true.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, she's climbing the ranks. Look out, Patrick Wilson.
And nobody even seen Amy Simmett's coming. Like nobody.
No.
Just like here she
So,
comes running out the doorway.
I'm here.
That,
She's
like,
got a pretty grisly death in this one, or at least adjacent.
No, that's quite true.
I'll say this. I'm gonna own it, and I'll say it and own it. This is the most I've enjoyed Danny McBride on screen in an incredibly long time. I actually like his performance in this. Now, it is worth mentioning, I feel like this came up on a pod recently, or maybe just in general conversation. In general, he's one of those performers that I don't tend to care for, because for quite a while there, it seemed like all he did was play the same beats.
Right.
And those beats were not things I enjoyed. So initially when I saw him there, I was like, oh, okay. Well, then watching the film, I was like, look, I like what you're doing, Danny. So between this and next week's entry, I was like, look, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, he specifically commented in interviews that he appreciated that he was cast as a pretty direct character, because being a comedian career-wise, traditionally, he expected, and especially with his hat and everything, he expected that he was going to be cast as this egotistical, like, buffoon that gets killed off in the first couple of deaths to prove the situation is serious or whatever. And so he was privileged and glad to find out. I mean, his character, ostensibly things are not going to go well for him based on how this film ends, but his character survives the film, which is, again, that's and the fact that he spends most of the film, you feel sympathy for him, you root for him with some of the efforts that he's trying to make, you understand the risky choices that he's making. He's a well-rounded character. He's one of the highlights of the film for me, honestly. So I agree.
Well, and it's just a more down version of what he kind of normally does, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I love Michael Fassbender. Have enjoyed his career for quite a while.
I will say,
was great. Yeah, what?
Before we leave Fassbender, I also love Fassbender. Walter's accent bugged the heck out of me.
It's a little weird.
Really, yeah. I didn't.
It's like a
for that.
British person pretending to be an android, pretending to be an American Midwestern. Yeah, it's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little strange. In fact, a note I had, because again, I was just trying to center myself on the chronology and figure out what on earth's going on. Because you see the opening scene with Wayland and David, and then we're just into the film, and then you meet Walter, and I wrote down, where is it? Is Walter David 10 years later? I wrote that down, and literally like a minute later wrote, never mind, because the film answered it for me by bringing David into the story. Like, oh, okay, no, that's all right.
Fine.
I wanted to comment, because you made this note a minute ago about the Prometheus comparison. Billy Crudup is such a great presence on screen, who I saw on Broadway, by the way, with Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen. Yeah.
He was in that? Oh.
No,
he was in Waiting for Godot.
No, he was in he was not in Waiting for Godot. Well, he had a adjacent. Specifically, he was in No Man's Land, which is a different play. So Stewart and McKellen were doing in rep Godot and No Man's Land, and there was them and then two other performers, one of which was Crudup, who had parts in both of those plays as well. But yes, I did get to see him on Broadway. It was really cool. But he's so magnetic on screen, such a great just sort of presence from a charisma standpoint, a performance standpoint, a visual standpoint. When it introduces his faith thing, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And then to your point, I was like, oh, well, I mean, or not,
They do very little with it. Like, they do some interesting thing. They start to do some interesting things with it in the spaceship interaction, But then once they get to the planet, like that's just it. Then his character is neurotic about the fact.
Tell me, remind me what with what you just said. I'm asking you. Remind me, what do they do in the spaceship other than just what what happens with Credup's character that if you took out the faith jargon would be any different?
Actually, nothing different that you wouldn't be able to explain by a sort of a hopeful optimism.
Yeah.
Because it's just that he has, belief in their mission and belief that things will turn out well for them, and therefore, this is a serendipitous occurrence that they've discovered this other planet, and they should, pivot over to that. But that's really it.
Now, to the film's credit, because of his name, because of at least how they prop up in name that aspect of his character, I did not see his it coming. Okay.
Bye,
you, bro.
Bye, Billy.
I do want to bring up, now I am just kind of bouncing all over the place, but we can go wherever you want.
That's all right.
As much as I will laud the full-grown xenomorph execution visually as it relates to cinema and creature design in the history of cinema, the face hugger as a thing, as a concept, might be one of the most disturbing and unsettling pieces of sci-fi arcana that exists in the visual medium. I mean, it is so unsettling and disturbing,
no question,
in its design and in what it does. Specifically, as film technology has progressed and as kind of practical creature design has progressed, I remember specifically in this film the like close-up shot of it wrapping its tail around his neck as it settles onto his face. I'm like, this is so nasty.
It's really awful. Yeah,
such an unsettling sort of concept and phenomenon.
I think in our episode on Alien, we had addressed, at least tangentially, that it was like, I don't know I can't remember now if it was conceptualized this way, but definitely like kind of appears like a reverse of a sexual assault kind of thing, but to like there's all that kind of imagery, like it's all wrapped up in the metaphor and in the way its mechanics work and everything. It's just, it's really.
Y'all, Reed said that, not me. Okay, so if you're gonna write some hate mail,
I think it's been studied on. I know. It's like I think it's been studied on.
I'm just running down a quick likes dislikes list here. I loved the Walter David fight. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yes, I did like that a lot. My only ding with it is it's got like some great, it's in my scares actually when David stabs him so unexpectedly, and then his, you think Walter's just been taken out, and then they bring Walter in one of the film's main stand up and cheer kind of moments. Walter and David fight. To your point, that's a fantastic fight. I just kind of dislike the way they ultimately remove the relevance of it with what they were trying to do. Not
remove the relevance of what?
Well, maybe that was an unfair.
Are you saying you like the showdown that you think is the final scene where he stabs him from behind or whatever it is he does?
Well, no, so I like that, and then I like when Walter comes back and is fighting with him, and
hello, David.
And then Walter gets, and he even says like, I forget what David says to him, like, I thought you were dead or whatever. He's like, there've been some upgrades since your day, and then like that's really awesome. That's cool. Really fantastic. Yeah. But then, and I knew it. I knew the moment that Walter, and I knew this from the first viewing, the moment that Walter like raises his hand back and then it cuts away to something else, I'm like, and then when Walter shows back up.
Listen, Reed, you don't need to be told you're a smart man. You don't have to inform us you knew this viewing. Because if anything, if you hadn't known this from the first viewing, it's one of the most poorly and directly telegraphed things in modern sci-fi movie making. Is
right. Good point.
I wonder if that's really Walt David.
Right.
You don't have to illustrate. Your smarts are achieved in on display in far better ways than being able to discern.
Fair point.
that
Fair
actually
point.
David and Walter. What was interesting, did you catch the deleted scene where right when that climactic moment when they're in the cave or the cavern or the cave or the lab or whatever, and David stabs him in the neck, there's at least a deleted scene that surprised me for how prescient it was, where Walter, just with gurgling cyborg fluid, says, "Ew, David."
I just figure, how long can I make you think that?
I know,
frozen?
dadgummit. Reed's
Ew,
like, I
David.
caught it the first time.
Like, I saw that coming, everybody. I saw it.
Yes, everyone saw that coming. It was the most poorly. I was like, oh, I literally wrote at the end of the scene, oh, David took his place. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, of course.
I do want to point out, in the add it to the list of Dream Warriors, in the ongoing discovery of scenes youth pastors should show teenagers of the dangers of premarital sex.
Yes.
That shower scene at the end is definitely one to add to the list.
Yes. I don't like the way that the alien's tail, like a scorpion tail, kind of comes under the shower thing. I'm like, nope. That put me off of intimacy and shower taking. So no, thank you on the whole time. Yeah. I just like, nope.
I love that you just like that put me off of intimacy and shower taking. Yeah, I'm not even gonna take a shower now.
Yeah.
What about an intimate shower? Even worse. Ew, David. Oh my God.
Ew, David. Yes. No.
You want to get to some scares?
I'm trying to see if there was anything else. No, I don't think so. Oh, I will say, just it's one of the few shots where, like, because I'm kind of frustrated by David's existence and presence in this film, but his arrival when the sort of
As
baby
the hooded
versions,
warrior.
right. I kind of thought that was pretty awesome, like where he just fires the flare up and everything. I thought that was a great like entry point for that, and so I love that little shot. But yeah, let's get to a few.
You
scares.
say that. I mean, I kind of agree with you. I think if I were less generous towards a little lowered affection for my first go round of the film, I mean, Fassbender looks pretty dumb with the long hair. It's really not a good look.
Yeah, but he cuts it very quickly, so there's that.
Well, right, because again,
telegraph.
I wonder what might happen here. So the scares there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this.
It's pretty nasty.
There's one that happens before this, but the first signal of the grotesquerie to come, at least the first major signal, is your boy's back bloody bursts on Amy Simmett's face.
Good Lord.
That is the most repulsive. So gross.
Yeah.
Blood everywhere. And then she comes back in with the gun and she just slips in it. I was like, this ain't right.
No.
Get out of there, girl.
Spinal blood. No, thank you. No, thank
and then she accidentally blows up the whole ship. I was like, damn. Wow.
That's overreaction. It's like those little memes where, they say like, the meme says found a spider, and then the next meme is like the whole house on fire. It's like killed it.
Pretty much.
Like that's it. Yeah.
She found the spider and blew up the whole ship.
Indeed.
I did not see that coming.
I did like, although it's I mean, pretty much all of the kills could rank. They're executed effectively. No pun intended on the word executed. But like Rosenthal's death with the beheading and everything, like she turns around and I remember I was watching the film. I hadn't really been. Rosenthal. She's the girl that gets beheaded at the fountain. She's pointing antiseptic on her like bullet wounds or those little
fleshy xenomorph.
Yeah. So that thing was pretty gruesome. I was like,
let me ask you. So but the xenomorph at the end of Prometheus is the traditional black skin type, or is it looks formed?
It looks very malformed from what we typically. You would be able to presume at the end of it that is an early version of, but no, it definitely is not, because it doesn't look the way
that little naked fella running through the woods, running through the fields, slashing and hacking and tail swacking people's jaws off. I was like, part of me thinks you cute, part of me thinks you nasty as fog.
Slashing and hacking. tail thwacking.
That ain't right. That ain't slashing, hacking, tail thwacking. That is baby Xeno. Look at him go. Look at baby Xeno go.
Baby Xeno moves.
Oh God. Oh no. Oh, my jaw's off. It's like a little chicken. You know,
oh, Lord have mercy. These are the alien. We should do more alien movies so that we can just, come up with all these ridiculous. The first one, Alien just wants a hug, like recontextualizes the whole thing.
Yeah.
This one,
he's just on his own out in the world.
The little engine that could, and then like, just
friends! I'm gonna get some friends.
Give a kiss. Give a kiss.
Starts dropping around him. It's like, what?
What's
the matter? I didn't do it.
I don't know what
that thing's nasty.
Oh.
I mean, I'll give him some props in this film. I mean, some of the designs ancillary to the traditional xenomorph is pretty dang nasty. I mean,
yes.
That Pale Man version,
well,
Pan's Labyrinth reference there, but
see, this is okay. So I love the fight scenes, but I will tell you that it frustrates me in this film that when big bad Mama Xenomorph finally shows up, the only time in this film that I get scared by its presence is when it first appears above the two, like in the cavern, when it like emerges from the ceiling and then drops down on them. That makes me kind of jump and energizes me a bit. But in the main big fights, like where it's going and it's whacking its head against the cockpit visor, and then even in the end where she's trying to escape it. Now, I will say, you referenced earlier the shower scene. I had forgotten about that. That is definitely sort of alarming. But I was thinking as those fight scenes were going, I was like, this is cool action, but I'm not scared of the big bad.
It's interesting. Like, this feels like it could beget a whole conversation that maybe can begin here and bleed over into some next week, because you're making me think of our film for next week, because it's interesting watching this film. It's to someone who's literally never seen a horror movie, or especially an alien movie, like they might watch this and be a little creeped out, but it is not scary. It is an action movie with a monster. But,
right.
But in terms of what we would now, time and history and legacy have dulled some of the rougher edges from the sharper edges of the first Alien film. But I would say that's traditional quote unquote horror,
absolutely,
in a real way that this is not. And it does make you kind of wonder. Again, I am intentionally signaling to next week and don't want to utterly unpack, but it feels, and this is sort of what I was getting at earlier, it feels like Alien the franchise is more interested in Alien the franchise than in, let's make a really wicked horror movie with the xenomorph creation that we've developed in cinema history that's really epic looking and horrifying.
Right.
They aren't interested in that anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Is that fair?
I think it's fair. And I think that for better or worse, this was aiming to a degree to try to recapture the imaginations of fans of the Alien franchise. So your point about the Alien franchise is interested in the Alien franchise, yes, exactly. Is like they want to, hey, we're getting a new Alien movie. Isn't everybody excited?
Here's the data dump you didn't know you wanted, is how they were made.
Right. And I will say that it's like, that's the thing, is the antagonist in this is David, and David is significantly, despite the whole mess about him trading places with Walter at the end and how far that's telegraphed. But he's our primary antagonist, and he's significantly more interesting and a little bit more ominous, and sort of like, I will say, it is creepier than anything the full-blown xenomorph does when he like has his big reveal that it shows it's him, and he's like, I'll tuck in the children, and he like gurgles up those little pods of the face hurgers. Like that's
face hurgers.
The face burgers.
Well, we got the xenomorphs over here and the face hurgers over there. And the church bursters. You know, it's a xenomorph.
Little Heidi face burger. Oh, oh Lord have mercy. But that's the so that's the thing that I like. I don't know. That's part of what distances me a bit from this film, is because I do feel like in the other Alien movies, the xenomorphs themselves are imposing presences, and they're frightening, and they are, even in Aliens, which is the other installment in this franchise that most directly aims for action sci-fi rather than horror sci-fi.
Right.
But still, the alien creatures in that are very frightening, and they are
Right.
imposing, especially the queen alien at the end. It's very arresting visually, and sort of energizes you. I'm just not that, like when she is fighting, maybe that's what it really is. And I don't think this was just about me seeing it for the second time. When she's fighting it on the platform,
Yeah.
and it's like crawling around, I'm not scared for her. I'm just like, oh,
Sure.
look at that
Yeah.
little,
It's just an
bugger
action set
running
piece.
around. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I feel like that hurts my affection for this film in a way that I wish
I
it
don't
had
know
been more
what
imposing.
I mean when I say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway.
What a preface.
Yeah. Knowing at least this person's reputation for what they put on screen, it feels like you almost need like a David Cronenberg-esque entry, like from the body horror standpoint, like what is left to be done to really mine what cinema horror is still available in this franchise. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right.
Like
right,
there's
right,
the sci-fi, which is the xenomorphology and David's
right.
tinkering and all that kind of stuff, and the mythology of the Weyland-Yutani group and what that means or doesn't mean, and your mileage will vary on how much you like that. But in terms of the film as a horror piece, what else could you do to push that? Okay, well, we've seen the xenomorph idea enshrouded in shadow and looming and overtake.
Right,
like there's not a whole lot of ground left to find that would, at least that readily comes to mind, that would push us into new horror levels, like something truly body horrific, which I don't want to watch, but would be a good way to continue that, especially considering how much, I mean, it feels like secondarily to monster subgenre is body horror right there. I mean, David
right
experiments on these things, and anyway, I don't know, just
no
thinking out loud of what's possible.
I don't disagree, and which would seem to substantiate why they were previously kind of on the right track with pivoting a bit away from that to something new and different with Prometheus. And then I grow, I'm a fan, and I love fans, and fans are great, and all that wonderful thing. But I hate the way that certain reactionary things from supposed widespread whatevers can sometimes inhibit otherwise very interesting storytelling, to the degree where it's like, there are so many people who would just prefer, because they want to see the big xenomorph be scurrying around and be an imposing figure, so they'd prefer that to something that maybe just for myself that I find significantly more interesting. And so maybe that's part of why I responded so much more strongly to what Prometheus was giving me. And then when I watched Alien Covenant, be like, actually, great, that's fine. This is kind of cool. But honestly, the most interesting parts of this movie to me are when there's not action set piece stuff going around, and with the characters interacting and trying to, understand what their mission is and understand what their goals are and all this other, and trying to figure out how they navigate these sort of treacherous terrains. That's the thing that interests me the most. So anyway.
Well, and you can tell me to shut up at some point of the things that come to me of, well, this could have been an interesting take here. To your point about what gets abandoned with Crudup's character, the clear felt need to stay beholden to the David thread established in Prometheus weighs down a little bit. Like the need to honor that doesn't do justice to what I'm about to say. But there would be something truly horrific and tragic if the thread of the story, the themes of the story, were about what happens when you think you've found a home that is rent and murderously so from you. Like that's
right.
If at the end of this film is Crudup surrounded by the eviscerated bodies of his crewmates and wife, because his hubris and shortcutting led them to this new place, and you almost have a Mist-esque ending where it's I don't know, to me that's pretty interesting. Like that's a new take on what is possible storytelling wise in this world.
No, I think that's incredibly fascinating, and would have been, sorry to keep coming back to it, listeners, but would have been a really good extension of the sort of subtextual exploration of Prometheus, which is, what if we meet our maker and he's trying to destroy us? That's the premise of Prometheus, is like, you spend all this time trying to reconnect with your maker, and your maker is either indifferent to you or actively wants to eradicate you. And how do you cope with that, and how do you navigate that? And that it's not the only thing Prometheus is about, but it is a fundamental sort of tenet of it. What you've just postulated with an alt-world covenant is significantly more interesting. Like, oh yeah, this is our home, this is our destiny, this is our, this is the place where we're going to lay our roots and everything. And then that is where, havoc has been unleashed in this.
Because you almost have this. I mean, they nod to it, but again, the pressures of action filmmaking and honoring the David thread kind of supersedes this, but you almost have this Jack Locke thing going on with Crudup and Danny, Crudup and Waterston, that is really interesting. His quote unquote faith is compelling him to say, this is where we need to stay.
Right.
And her compulsion towards, I am not sure about this, like, keep that as your central theme.
Right.
That then just becomes this uber tragic tale of just not following the path or whatever, or trying to shortcut it. Anyway,
I agree. So do you think that might be a good segue to sort of just unpack one idea that I did think was kind of interesting in this? I don't know if you had anything substantive that you wanted to make sure we touched on in Covenant. Do you mind, or do you have something you want to share first?
No. I'm good. I don't know where you're going, but I don't have any massive stuff. I did write down, because it's a hell of a line. We can feel free to use it to use it as its own launch pad, graft it into what you have to say, or just hit and run. I love the line when Walter to Danny, as she's going into cryosleep, if we are kind, it will be a kind. And I mean, it's an ironic line coming from this character, but it's a really pregnant line. Anyway.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely.
I don't have any other real unpacking to do there.
So I did want to hone in on David's character, because it's the line you just cited. It is ironic because, yes, he is pretending to be Walter at that moment and is putting, his sort of hoped for statement out to her. But his whole invention of these xenomorphs, this is what I thought was interesting, is he's pursuing the creation of like a perfect organism. That's what at least part of his sort of mission is this this perfect, flawless creation. That's what he's trying. As a
brief trivial bit, he says that in this film, and unless I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure Bishop of the first film.
Yes,
that's a line he says. It's also
Ash from the first film. Yeah.
Is there a Bishop? Am I making that up?
You're not making it up. Bishop appears in Aliens. Ash is the one from Aliens.
Is Bishop Lance Henriksen, or Lance Henriksen?
Yes.
No,
Bishop,
Ash is Ian Holm. Yeah,
yes.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, Bishop is Lance Henriksen. Ash is the one that finds the xenomorph an impressive species, a perfect sort of organism.
Right.
And this is what David's pursuing. But what I struck onto is the way that, and maybe this will go places, maybe it won't. But the underpinning of that idea of perfection is lacking weakness and vulnerability. That's what is, so many people in so many ways is that this is perfect because it lacks weakness and it lacks vulnerability. And what I found fascinating, particularly with what this year has done to us and with what so many things that have been reflections, both spiritual, social, political, everything, is that in many ways, particularly in matters of faith, that can be backwards. We're actually, not being willing to acknowledge weakness or vulnerability, or not being willing to embrace it, or not being willing to at least address it, is actually one of the biggest sort of catalysts for self-destruction. When in point of fact, in the backwards view of it, we as Christian believers, Christ displays vulnerability in subjecting himself to the cross and all of these kinds of things. And the scriptures even say that his strength is made perfect in our weakness. Paul is talking about in that passage where he's this is from scripture, not from the film, obviously, but Paul talks about, like, I'm gonna boast in the things that are flaws and shortcomings, because his strength is made perfect in my weakness, so that nobody should boast. And I'm not saying that to say that the appropriate and right thing is to idolize brokenness, which I do think is a possibility. Sometimes people can flaunt or idolize brokenness as if it were somehow an antidote to health, and that what would be desired would be to stay sick, which is certainly by no means what I'm saying. But I think perfection that is relentlessly pursued as an eradication of weakness is only going to lead to consumptive destruction. And I think if there's anything that I would sort of latch onto in this, is that, David is continually trying to find a host for these seeds, this ooze, this whatever, that will produce the perfect organism. And what he produces is monstrous and consumptive and cannot be reasoned with, cannot be made a pet. It is a destructive, despite our observations that it just wants a hug in the first time we talked about this. It is a destructive force. And I feel like maybe not much more needs to be said about it, at least from my initial launch to conversation, is just that as if we pursue that eradication of weakness, I think what we will find on the other end of it is actually our own destruction, because we will relentlessly give ourselves over to a denial of reality, or to a refusal to accept where we are vulnerable and weak, rather than actually, dealing with it, embracing it, recognizing it. I will say one more thing, going back to our conversation many years ago now at this point on the Babadook, and what we had talked about with the character of the neighbor in the Babadook, and how she had Parkinson's and suffered from Parkinson's, but displayed significantly more strength of character and personhood in the simple fact that she was willing to talk about it and willing to be honest about it. And when, the boy asks her about it and why she shakes, she's willing to say, well, this is what I have. I suffer from this affliction, and this is what it is, and this is what it does in my body. And that is profound strength in that moment. And I think we ourselves do ourselves a disservice when we are unwilling to acknowledge our weaknesses, and to include and forgive them, as has been our recent vernacular. Include and forgive them. Again, not idolizing them as somehow the most important thing, but not also relentlessly pursuing denial of them, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know if that resonates with you, or if that's just like, Reed, that's not what covenant is about.
I feel like a face hugger's got me.
It's a face hugger.
And the Xena move is trying to tell me something. Move. It's interesting, something you conjured there, and echoing that franchise repeating line, the perfect organism, with reference to the xenomorph, because you're correct in what Ash observes and in what David attempts to manufacture. It is this paragon of kind of imperviousness and strength and, honestly, in a word, violence,
Yes.
to be very direct. And strangely, I feel like there's a world where you could take some interesting political conversation there about, the Ubermensch idea, this exceptionalism embodied in strength and violence, frankly. But where I actually want to go that does what I think you're trying to do, because what you conjured for me was scripture, honestly, of be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect, which is in Matthew. And this is in specifically a section that, if anything, is the emblem of and expression of utter and fully fleshed out faith. It's couched in this section of Matthew that is about love for your enemy. And if there's anything that's fascinating right now, it's that, David in his manufacturing, Ash in his observing, Wayland in his engineering, it's create the perfect organism for the purposes of dispatching enemy. Perfect, right. Used as violence to destroy. When Jesus uses the same verbiage to say perfection is ultimate and imminent and self-sublimating love for that which wishes to destroy you, your enemy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I think about what this is making me think of too is you use the phrase vulnerability. And so kind of following that rabbit trail a little bit on maybe our Infinity War conversation, Ian in talking about Captain America, which, again, this imagery of the Ubermensch, whether it's David engineering the xenomorph to destroy, or Erskine using the super soldier serum to embellish and empower. What was discussed in our Infinity War conversation was, thank God for Steve Rogers.
Right.
Vulnerability and what's a good word for him? Self-sacrificing.
Right.
As your starting point.
Yeah. Others mindedness. Right.
Which is then empowered to now defend as opposed to destroy. Right. And I don't know. I just think that's something really interesting. And I don't know if you feel this way lately. And I'm going to attempt to not get emotional here, because all of a sudden it's kind of sideswiping me like a naked xenomorph tail whacking me in the face. Do you ever feel lately like, God, I don't even know the words anymore because they've all been hijacked?
Yeah.
Like, what? I know what I think I mean when I say what faithfulness and Christ-likeness and embodied faith look like, or are supposed to look like, but damn it, you're going to take what I'm saying and you're going to just flip it around, and you're going to pervert it, and you're going to make me think, well, why did I even say that?
Yeah.
And that's a disheartening and unsettling feeling. And where that's coming from right now is this notion of perfect, the perfect organism, which is a thing you and I would look at and say, that's a thing to be afraid of, to not perpetuate that thing. Don't touch that. What are you doing? So there's that. And then there's Christ saying, be perfect. Therefore, as my heavenly Father is perfect.
Right.
Love your, like, what I want to say in my words is that what you're going to hear, which gets to a whole other passel of conversation points, is the other one. I'm saying love your enemies. You're saying you are my enemy and I will
Right.
destroy you.
Right.
My perfection,
Right.
my exceptionalism. And so I don't mean to make it about me, but I've thought about this lately of just like, I feel like there's this sense in which, and this is just being slightly confessional here, there's this sense in which I lately have felt, and it's implicit, it's utterly implicit, it's subconscious, but it's responsiveness to the power of the air.
Yeah.
I feel silenced because the efforts I feel like I would make to articulate what I think is good, right, appropriate, holy, and beautiful are gonna get perverted. And man, I'm just tired of it.
Yes. Oh God, yes. Yeah. I came, and obviously the platform that is most conducive to whole fruitful conversation is not social media.
Correct.
But
absolutely. Repeat that.
But what you've just described, I experienced multiple times in the past couple of weeks in efforts to try to say something constructive, to speak into the times, and in not saying anything because I knew I could hear in my head the way somebody would read it and twist it, and immediately like sort of twist it around and take what was at least intended to be constructive and maybe a bit challenging, but pushing things forward, and then just, to your word, pervert it. Not pervert it as in they proceed from perverted intentions, but from, I will be bold in saying, perverted assumptions and conclusions. And then now everything gets filtered through that lens to where you can't even hear what's being said. There's a moment, I've name dropped this film on the show before, but I love the 6.5 hour long Life of Christ film, Jesus of Nazareth, and think on and reflect on it often because its script is very powerful. And there's a moment in it where Ian Holm, playing a Pharisee leader, speaks and confronts Jesus when Jesus says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will make it rise again." And Zara is Ian Holm's character, and he confronts him. He says, it took centuries to build this temple. You really think you can rebuild it in 3 days? And Jesus says back to him a line that's not in scripture but resonates so powerfully. He said, "You said it, but you have not understood it." And when I hear this, and it's brilliant, and I don't have the words to unpack it, but when I hear you talk about, like, yes, Christ tells us, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect," and we have the audacity and arrogance to think we know what he means,
right? And
to think that we will hear that and go like, "Yep, Lord, on it," and go and set about making ourselves perfect.
Already there.
Right. And think that it would not require in his co-commandment to say, "As your Father in heaven is perfect." Well, doesn't that then mean that we need to have some version of ongoing relationship to understand how the Father in heaven is perfect and what that means in our life, and how that is a humbling of our ego and a challenge to us to constantly be in a position and a posture where we are dependent and continuing to sort of move towards that and bend towards that, as opposed to saying, "Yes, you know what, I am going to be. You can count on me, and this is what's going to happen." And I get so torn up in my spirit sometimes. You are the one, Nathan, frequently apologizing for making volcanic political statements. But I'm about to make one. So
before you do that, I think I make them a lot. Do I apologize for them?
at least hang a lantern on the fact that they exist.
Sure. Yeah.
We are recording this right now on December 2nd, and as of right now, the election has just passed, and President-elect Biden was voted on as our next president of the United States, and I have reflected and tried to express in so many different ways, and think maybe I'll probably even be challenged in this, not by you, but maybe even for putting this out on the airwaves, of saying how fitting, dreadful as it is to watch, how fitting and how appropriate, again, dreadful as it is, maybe even prophetic, that this administration would conclude with a national display of being unwilling to cope with defeat and being unwilling to cope with loss and being unwilling to admit and acknowledge any sense of a chink in the armor or a humanness, as it will.
Perfect organism.
Perfect organism. And I'm not trying to be an opportunist and seize this moment to make a statement like that, but I think what is valuable for us to recognize in what we see in some of the behavior of our national leaders, and what we see sometimes in the behavior of our religious leaders who refuse to acknowledge the problems that have existed in the church for years and years and years, or in the leaders of homes, husbands, fathers, maybe in some differing cases, mothers and wives, but people refusing to admit that we are not perfect and that we are not, that we are fallible, that we are flawed. And in so many instances, I know it's a bold statement and a blanketed statement, which I want to resist, but it rises up in my spirit to say, like, the more you want to dig your heels in to say that you have that you are not capable of error, or that you are not capable of flaw or mistake, that is probably where you are the closest to utter destruction. Like, and oh, I'm sorry. Scriptures say that pride goes before a fall. Like there, it is laid out for us that level of unbridled unwillingness to admit that perfect is not something that we are necessarily, compelled or commanded to obtain or achieve, or at the very least, like I hear you cite when Christ tells us to be perfect, and I think we have to admit that we have to first of all find out what does he mean by that. And I love, you shared an article to myself and a few of our friends not that long ago where it was talking about Stephen Colbert and his journey, and he had said in it, in fact, I'm going to pull it up because I want to quote it directly, but Colbert had said in this article, talking about loss and everything, and he said, this was Stephen Colbert talking about things. He said, the message of Christ isn't that you can't kill me. The message of Christ is you can kill me, and that's not death. And it's not precisely what we're talking about here, but tangential enough for me to say, like, you can say be perfect, and that doesn't mean deny vulnerability. That doesn't mean reject fallibility. That doesn't mean utterly abandon your willingness to admit vulnerability, your willingness to admit flaws and fallibility. It doesn't mean we have to consistently be immutable and consistently be I don't know. I am very, very much compelled, and in some, haunted is not the right word, but challenged by his strength is made perfect in our weakness. That maybe there is a place. I feel like I'm about to say something, and I can't remember where I've heard this thing, but I feel like I heard it from somewhere, maybe read it from somewhere or whatever, but that maybe we are stronger with our weaknesses than we would be without them. And I think there's a world in which that may be what it means to be perfect as the Father in heaven is perfect.
But I want to know what I think you're saying, that I know you're borrowing religious language there. His strength is perfect in our weakness, but I want to graft this whole thing is, we start talking about words and meanings and weakness. I want to supplant with the word that you've already used of vulnerability. I think weakness connotes error or falseness or imperfection is clearly perhaps appropriate there, but what I think is most appropriate is this notion of vulnerability. And I can't seem to get away, and I want to keep it in the spirit of the stew of the film's things we're pulling out here, of like this perfect organism, this thing meant to destroy, overtake, stand above, and rend.
Right.
Named perfect. Called perfect. And I'm going to defend myself a little bit here. One of our listeners, who's a good buddy here locally, we've done some theater stuff. I won't name his name in case he'd be like, I wish you hadn't said that. Sometime recently, he commented to me on Facebook. He was like, I used to think a lot of what you said was just hyperbole, but I'm not sure about that anymore. So I'm going to say things that are going to sound hyperbolic, but I mean them with I mean well what I think I'm saying. That's one way to put it.
Wow. Okay.
The intention to destroy, overtake, overpower, rend, and stand above, called perfect, is in many ways the worst of our nationalistic tendencies. And this is what I'm talking about when I say the words I think I'm trying to impart into the world are getting taken away from me, and they're getting mixed up in a stew they're not meant for. Now, I think intercession may say, where do you deploy these words in a very literal sense?
Right.
And that matters greatly. Because something I want to throw in here as maybe my final talking thread here is, where did this come up recently? My wife and I were talking. My wife will occasionally drop truth bombs on me, and recently, this may have been in reference to something I've already mentioned on the show before, but part of our marital vernacular is the Brene Brown quote, "You can't hate someone up close." And man, we don't like that.
Right. Yeah.
Because what we want is distant, is foreign, is I'm going to do it, alien. Because if you're over there and away, in my perfection, I can dismiss, I can destroy, I can demean.
Right.
Because I am perfect. But Christ redefines that.
Yeah.
In this passage about loving enemy. Because if you, I'm saying this to me, but I'm saying it to our listeners. Most people who listen to our show have some history and or current experience in the church. If you attend a church that names opponents and names enemies and lets that stand, find somewhere else.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
And I mean that with every fiber of my being, because if love of enemy, such that ultimately none are our enemy, is not in the very DNA of what defines us as faithful, it is not faithful. Thus, perfection is redefined. And I'm this whole, you can't hate someone up close. I'm trying to preach to myself here as much as just converse with you and share with listener that the reason I am struggling with feeling silenced or that my words are being taken from me is I really am putting them in the wrong places. And I'll own that.
Right.
Because, which doesn't mean, hey, Nathan, don't write that thing or don't say that thing. I like that.
Right. Of course.
Is be careful and be mindful, because those are not relationships.
Yeah.
Those are alphanumerics entered into an algorithm that someone else is not going to receive in faithfulness and love.
Right, of course. Right.
And you and I not necessarily like this, though you occasionally come at a thing at a different angle. But for anyone listening, for you and I, as we go out into the world from this exercise room, this analogy I used on the dead zone, it's to say, okay, perfection means love of enemy. This person is coming at this thing a different way than I am. I can't just readily dismiss them, because that's not faithfulness to love.
Right.
That's not perfection. That's not practicing vulnerability. Doesn't mean we may come away buddies and lifelong chums, but it does mean I don't have permission to, much as I want to, much as my impulse is there, to call them fool and to dispense and dismiss and demean and destroy in my head and in my spirit them.
Right.
And anyway, I know this. What I don't want to be heard is me just on a diatribe. I'm trying to address these poles of what the world and the perversion and the twistedness and the powers and principalities and the power of the air embodies in the form of the perfect organism is the spawn of hell.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And is disgusting and will destroy us. Whereas the emblem of loss, the paragon of self-sacrifice says, hey, wait a minute. Perfection is saying that you have no enemy.
Yeah.
Which is gonna cause you a lot of pain, but you befriend that pain. You befriend that suffering. You befriend that because I've shown you how that is possible.
Right.
Because in doing that, you recognize you are on the same playing field as every other person, and who is deserving and as deserving of love and respect. Anyway.
No, absolutely.
Alien Covenant. What in the world?
Right. Oh man, it feels so much like the ones we enter into where it's just like, yeah, maybe this will be a quick conversation, and then suddenly that's when
the
Xenomorph just chest bursts out of the
and face hurger. All right.
Oh, you want to go to the fog meter?
I do.
Let's do it.
Fog meter. This is how we rank our movies here at the Fear of God, on fear and on God. I will go first on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm going to give Alien Covenant a fear ranking of 4. You know, it's it might have had, I mean, for pure just kind of gross factor, there's some of that there, and not just gross at like actually ugh. You like how I distinguish those two things?
Yes. Not
is
ick, but ugh.
Gross, or is it like ugh, gross? This is more like ugh. You know, the xenomorph is always going to be relatively effective at the, you know, kind of scary imagery.
Sure.
I do think they raised the game for me a little bit in terms of the naked chicken alien people things. I mean, that's in terms of just you know, it's like a little one doing the chicken dance, the squirrel, you know.
Oh,
you know,
Lord have mercy.
is that a squirrel dance? I don't know what
Chicken
that
dance.
stupid thing is.
I don't
Chicken
know.
Dance.
Oh, Lord.
So yeah,
have
I give it a
mercy.
4 on scares. What about you, Riri?
Well, it was really funny because I was about to lead with a 5, but I think you've now made comical one of the few things that I find really harrowing and frightening about the movie. No, sincerely. So, yeah,
Trying to play tag. You're it.
Don't offend me.
My jaw's falling off, but now I'm it. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
I'll run. I will. Yeah, I'll stick with my 5. I think there are some, but it's more about the gross out factor than it is about the sort of, you know, scary kind of harrowing notion. So I'll join you with your fear. Well, you had a 4. I'll just slightly higher with a 5 for me. The God meter. I'm going to own that some of this might be the fault of Prometheus by comparison. But even trying to take Covenant on its own terms, I don't think it effectively does much with the elements that it tries to unpack. So 2.
Wow, wow, wee, wow. You just face
just-
hugged that ranking.
I was gonna say, a face huggered. A face huggered the Covenant.
Yeah, I mean, I'll reverse what you did to me and go with a 3. I mean, there's not, they give some lip service to some stuff, but don't really do anything with it, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll go with a 3.
Agreed. It's mostly face hugger service than it is anything else. That's about it. That means that on the fog meter, we give Alien Covenant, directed by Ridley Scott, 6th installment in the Alien franchise. 3.5 out of 10 on fog meter. One of our
How
one of
low
our
can
lower
you go?
one of our
That little
lower
guy can limbo, let me tell you.
He's like, oh no, I make it under this.
Party.
So what the main question though is, would you recommend Alien Covenant to people?
I actually enjoyed watching it. It was fun. I mean,
I did have a fun time.
Again, I did not, because I'm not this devotee of the franchise and more just like, let me see what they do with this one. I found it entertaining.
Okay. I would say skip it. I would more pivot to recommending Prometheus. But
that wasn't the question, Reed.
That wasn't the question. No. But that's what I'm saying. Like,
or would you say I don't recommend watching Prometheus if you think you might watch Alien Covenant?
Correct. Watch Alien Covenant and then go back and see Prometheus. No, I mean, obviously, if you're a fan of the franchise and have not seen Covenant, sure, go ahead. You will find it fun. But yeah, to the casual viewer and to fans of sort of more thoughtful cinema, I would say you can skip it. You can pretty effectively skip it. So that puts yet another full episode installment of #2020 in the books. And next week we are going to be going to your favorite horror films of 2018.
Wow.
And
Man,
entry, and I know we're getting there.
Years ago.
It's crazy. So and we will be having an extended conversation about a film that we have danced around for almost 2 years now, with saying we would maybe cover.
Actually 2 years.
Actually 2 years, of saying we would probably cover it. Eventually going to get to it. Knew it was coming, and here we are. It is. We are going to be going back to. We are going to be going back to the old Haddonfield, and specifically David Gordon Green's Halloween. So not Rob Zombie's Halloween, not John Carpenter's Halloween. David Gordon Green's.
Carpenter EP, didn't he?
He did. He EP'd. He wrote the score. I'm excited to talk about it.
I kind of hate that we would be breaking the law to throw that score on this next week's episode, because it is so dang good.
This is such a great score. So yes, by all means, reacquaint yourself if you haven't already seen it, but a lot of people saw it, so you've probably seen it. But next week, we're going to be covering 2018's Halloween, starring once again Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. So check it out. We'll see you next week. As we say on every episode, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, but not the end of the conversation. And in that spirit, we encourage you to fear nothing else and be on your way rejoicing. Nathan, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Holding my hand in the planetary regions of the chicken morph, whatever it is.
See you next week, guys.
Bye, everybody.
You on, everybody.
You
Goodbye,
are
everybody.
Not too bad.
That was good.
Yeah.